Hey, what's up guys? Gonz here for the FaceLikeTheSun YouTube channel. A lot of things happening in space. Titan, Saturn's methane-covered moon, could allow alien life, researchers say. And again, as I've been saying all along here, they're pumping out more information to tell the world that life can happen in outer space. Now, I know there's a continued debate in this community about if the Earth is flat, if there's a firmament, if outer space is fake, if everything out there is faked. I get it. I've been part of the discussion of looking at some of the lies that NASA has clearly perpetrated to continue to maintain their status as, this exploration company or whatever. But I want you guys to suspend whatever sort of preconceived notions or new preconceived notions that you've created in this last year regarding space, whatever bias, and simply look at it in terms of above or heaven or out there. Now, if you think about it, one of the main things about the Tower of Babel was that they wanted to reach to heaven, right? One of the goals for Satan was to ascend above heaven to the throne of God. And if we, again, just keep it very simple, what's happening here is mankind is allegedly going above. They're going into outer space, whatever you want to call it. We don't have to necessarily agree on everything beyond that, because what they're doing here is a clear display of this achievement of getting out there. Now, of course, they've said they've achieved it over the last few decades with the moon and Mars and all these probes and everything else. And we can have a discussion about that and whether that's real or it's true or whatever. But this is the continuation of that agenda. So whatever you believe about that stuff, it doesn't matter, because right now in our face, they're telling us all kinds of things about out there. And I think the setup here again is to let people digest this possibility of having extraterrestrial life, alien life, and specifically perhaps ancient alien life, with recent news about Phobos and Deimos, which are the moons of Mars. They're saying may have been formed by a third body striking the planet. And this is very consistent with the research of David Flynn, Joseph P. Farrell, and also certain ways you can read the scriptures the way David Flynn suggested. It doesn't even have to be that, because if mankind is going to explore outer space further and further, and they have to go through changes, right? Some sort of genetic changes, DNA changes, or whatever to accommodate for the different shifts that happen when you go into outer space. Well, we're talking about transhumanism. We're talking about changing our genetic makeup to accommodate for space, this other dimension, if you want to call it that. And so this is already affecting humankind in that way as well. So there's lots to consider here. And again, as always, I'm not saying that this has direct ties to any specific fulfillment of a specific passage of scripture. What I'm saying is the climate is continuing to heat up for some of these things to happen. But before I start rambling too much here, let me get into this video. This is Mark Zuckerberg, who had an interview discussion with these 3 astronauts on the International Space Station, and they talked about certain things. I'm going to pause in certain moments and comment on certain areas, but here it is.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
We are ready for the event.
All right.
Facebook, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for voice check.
All right, station, this is Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Mark, we read you loud and clear. It's a pleasure to talk with you today.
It's great to talk to you guys too. I have to say, when you're building products to try to connect everyone in the world, connecting folks who are out in space is about as extreme and cool as it gets. So it's awesome to have the opportunity to talk to you guys today. Thanks for doing this. So I think we should start by,
Well, it's our pleasure.
Can you introduce yourselves and your roles and how long you've been working up there for?
Yeah, sure. My name is Tim Coper. I'm the commander of the International Space Station for Expedition 47. Tim Peake and I arrived on the 15th of December, and we've been working up here for about 169 days. What a great place to work and live. And Tim Peake is one of our flight engineers. Jeff Williams is a flight engineer as well, just arrived a couple of months ago. And this is his 4th flight in space, 3rd time on the space station, so a great person to have on board. This is my 2nd flight, Tim's 1st flight here, and we have 3 cosmonauts on board too that are at the other end of station that make our complement of a 6-person crew.
Nice. So let's start with a couple of questions here about the science that you're doing on board the space station. So what kind of research are you doing in space that we can't do anywhere else?
That's a great question, Mark. One of the main things that we do is try to understand the impacts of zero gravity on the human body, a lot of negative impacts. And so in large measure, we're an experiment. So we exercise a couple hours every day, which is a mitigation for the loss of bone density and muscle mass. We have our eyes scanned because there's issues with your eyes as a consequence of zero gravity, and several other things that we do on board to try to make sure that when we go beyond low Earth orbit, we fully understand the implications of zero gravity on the human body. But well beyond that, we do lots of basic research up here as well, because when you remove the gravity component to a lot of physical phenomena, you learn a lot of things. So we have physical science experiments that range from combustion to fluid flow, to microbiology, and so we're learning a ton, and we expect that to pay dividends long-term in terms of benefit for our planet.
Now, there's something interesting about this in very basic terms. Now, if there is a space station and they're out there and they're, experimenting the physical body and biology and all kinds of stuff and how it operates in space, not only the point I made earlier about this leading to transhumanistic tendencies or changes in our physical makeup and our DNA, etc., there is already a unintended quality to what they're doing. What I mean by that is they said their bones and muscles deteriorate. That means that the human body is not meant to be in space. And, that's a biblical concept. Psalm 115, verse 16. The heaven, even the heavens, and some translations say the heavens are the Lord's heavens, but the earth he has given to the children of men. Some translations say son of man, children of men, humanity, mankind. So the earth here was given to us. This is where we belong. This is where our bodies were made of, the earth. But this is also where we allowed sin into our lives and the decay of the whole creation. So it's interesting that these guys are out there in space doing their thing and their physical bodies deteriorate, and obviously things operate differently when they're away from quote-unquote gravity. And again, in many ways, I do feel that it's crudely a different dimension when you're up in space, much like when you're underwater. And I've talked about this before where I've spent a lot of time underwater because I was a swimmer growing up. And it's a whole different world down there. Obviously, you can't breathe, but just the way you can move, the way you can traverse in water is completely different from the way you can on land. So in a similar way, I would imagine space is like that.
All right, so I'm curious to hear about what kind of technology you guys are working on that's going to help us travel to Mars. Beyond, of course, all the communication technology that we're working on to be able to connect with you guys to make sure that that works.
Well, I think in general, the ISS program is a big achievement in terms of the path to future exploration. I mean, just building and running and maintaining logistically, learning how to operate it day to day and for the long term, for years to come, all of that's going to support future exploration no matter where we go. Of course, an example that's been in the news here recently, especially in the last couple of weeks, is the beam module, the inflatable module, which we've got inflated now, and we're going to outfit it, instrument it. It's a new technology which will, of course, allow greater volumes to be launched with fewer launches. And of course, it's going to take a lot of volume to send a crew away from Earth, no matter where the destination is.
So I think we saw what's going on here. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, the virtual realities, all the way to quantum computing even, is part of the greater agenda here in creating what they're saying is the communication system for these future space explorations, where obviously their communication systems are going to have to be very airtight. And with the added dimension, for lack of a better word, of the virtual space that can be created by reaching into space or out there, I think this network of communications that are supposed to be in place for things like the image and the mark could be grander in scale than we thought.
All right, so let's take some questions from the thread. And by the way, it's awesome to see the microphone just flying around over there. That is not something that I'm used to even in our virtual reality lab where we can make stuff like that. We just haven't yet. So let's go to the thread. So we got a question from Hakeem, which is obviously astronauts train extensively for this kind of a mission, but is there anything in particular that you weren't expecting or that surprised you? Like the microphone?
Yeah, that's a good question. And for myself, as a rookie astronaut on my first flight, there were so many new experiences. The training is phenomenal, and we have a wonderful training team all around the world in all of our international partner sites. But it's the real experience of launching in a Soyuz rocket and seeing that first orbit of planet Earth, going through sunset, seeing a moonrise, seeing a sunrise. It's just, you can't put into words how beautiful the planet is from up here, and also having the privilege of seeing it change over the nearly 6 months that we've been up here now already, and seeing the northern hemisphere going from winter to summer, seeing thunderstorms at nighttime, the aurora. It's just absolutely incredible. So I think it's all of those kind of elements that the training really just can't prepare you for.
I have to say, I think it's amazing how precise everything that you guys do has to be. So just getting ready for this live today, which, by the way, is the first live that we've ever done to outer space, so that is awesome. Normally at Facebook, sometimes we run a few minutes early or a few minutes. Sometimes we start as much as 10 seconds late in our events. And I just thought that was the funniest thing. But it's amazing how precise you guys need to be in everything that you do to make things run safely. So, all right. So let's. So what's the next question that we should go to? We on the thread, Martha has written in. My second grade students in Florida, she's a teacher, want to know how do you talk to each other if you're all from different countries and speak different languages?
We know we do speak different languages up here. Tim speaks British. We speak American. No, but seriously, we have 3 Russian cosmonauts on board, and we've had a whole host of different international astronauts up here. Japanese, Canadians, Germans, all kinds of European astronauts. And as a consequence, we have to be able to communicate. But typically, when we do our training, if it's a German or Japanese or Canadian or American training, we speak English. When we go to Russia, we speak in Russian. And so we all speak Russian to varying degrees of skill level. Our Russian cosmonaut friends speak English very well. And so when we get together, typically on board, we'll speak either Russian or English or maybe a Ruslish, a combination of both. But it's very important for us to communicate. And in fact, that's probably the biggest aspect of our job up here, is to make sure that everybody is on board and synchronized. Just like you said, it's important to be on time and to have things done well, but that's all done through effective communication, and that's really done by us knowing each other's languages, at least Russian and English, well enough that we can train in both those different environments.
Very impressive.
Again, let me just take you guys back to Genesis 11 and see what it says there. Verse 6, it says, "And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them." And what they were doing, verse 4, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its tops in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And isn't it interesting how they're saying, these countries, and again, I point this out because it's so interesting that, if there's geopolitical tension between nations, how fabricated that is, because, you have these 2 nations working together for space exploration, for example, and even China being a part of that. But I digress. This idea that once we can communicate again with each other as a human race, as one race, what will we do? Well, we will try to ascend to heaven. It's just a perfect example here of how God's word is true, even to this random discussion between Mark Zuckerberg and 3 astronauts on the International Space Station.
So in addition to being top scientists and in great shape and very precise operationally, you also need to be linguists. So let's go to another question on the thread, which is a little more fun, is do food and drinks taste differently in space?
Most astronauts that have been up here over the years will say that their tastes change a little bit. I think it has to do mostly with we kind of get a fullness in the head due to the environment. We have a fluid shift of our body because the gravity's not pulling down. So that sometimes results in a stuffiness or whatnot. So maybe our tastes are attenuated a little bit. So most of us like to have spicier food up here. The food can taste a little bland, so we'll spice it up a little bit on our own. So I would say food does taste a little bit different. We, by the way, have a wide variety of food on board from all different countries, from the partner countries, represented in all the partners. So the food up here is very, very good.
And is astronaut ice cream a real thing?
We know that astronaut ice cream that you buy in the gift store, that powdery stuff, yeah, that's not real. But we've had ice cream on board. When SpaceX came up, they delivered a bunch of ice cream in a freezer, so that's been quite the treat. I think we're down to our last few bars. We're trying to ration it. So that's the real ice cream, and that's quite a treat up here.
Awesome. All right, so I want to make sure that we get back to our live community, because this is the first chance that we've had to stream live to space. So Rob has a question, which is, what advice can you give aspiring explorers like me regarding how you got to be where you are today on board the International Space Station?
You know, that's a question we get asked quite a lot. And if you look at the astronaut corps, not just in one country, but all over the world, we all come from so many different backgrounds. Some people have come from scientific, from engineering, from aviation, medical, doctors, maybe teachers. The one thing that we share in common is that we're very passionate about what we do. And we've worked as hard as we can to get where we are. So to any young people who are aspiring to become an astronaut, to become explorers, or just to go into the space industry, I would say just focus on what it is that you're good at and what you enjoy, because if you enjoy something, that's what you tend to be best at. Work hard at it, be passionate about it, and you'll get where you want to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot of the same stuff for becoming an entrepreneur as well. So, one question that I have is I've heard that you guys use social networking and social technology quite a bit to communicate with people back down on Earth. And I'm curious to hear how that goes, how the internet connection works, and basically, do you have any feedback for me on how we can make the service better for you?
Social media is a really nice way to reach your friends and family from up here. And, our internet connection is actually a relatively new thing. And so we're very happy to have that because, the whole world has become so connected that it really feels good that we can sort of be connected. It's not quite the same speed, bandwidth that folks have down on the ground, but it's good enough, and it allows us to keep in touch with friends and family. But social media for me personally, I can say is great because it's one way that I can share the photographs that I take and a few thoughts that I have up here. Because one thing about life up here, it's so unique, and it is such an opportunity and a blessing for us to be up here that be able to share it with other people, especially a wide audience. I mean, a huge audience, frankly, with social media is just a tremendous benefit. So. For myself, I enjoy being able to share pictures and a few thoughts from our experience up here.
Yeah, well, I love following the photos as well myself. So, what do you guys do for fun when you're out in a zero gravity environment? I mean, what's the most fun thing that you've found to do that you didn't expect?
Well, we do a lot of things that are fun. Actually, none of us get tired of viewing the Earth from up here, so we spend a lot of time in the windows studying all the details of the Earth. Tim talked about the different seasons and stuff that goes by, and the different lighting conditions and the weather patterns, and all the geography and the geology, and the ocean currents and thunderstorms, seeing lightning ripple across a weather system. That's a lot of fun. So we spend a lot of time in the window. Of course, you've talked about the microphone. We all can, from time to time, especially around a dinner table, play with our food in unique ways. So we all get to be kids again, and those kinds of doing those kinds of things. It's fun to play with water and weightlessness, and take a bubble of water and do different things with it. So just the weightless environment and the view, I think, are the two main areas that we have fun with.
So you just fly around and flip around the space station? There you go. That's what I was looking for. All right. So going back to a science question for a bit, thank you guys for doing that, by the way. I think it would not have been a complete first live to space without some astronauts flipping around in zero gravity. So going back to science for a second, and you were talking about how a lot of this is experimenting on the human body to see what it can take in space. What's the longest period that any astronaut has remained in space? And what are the experiments that are being conducted geared towards future